Hey Providence, I want to share with you the relationship between the Shema and discipling kids. You see, this video is for moms and dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, Discovery Street volunteers. It really applies to the entire church because we care about discipling kids. And it's important to understand how the Shema ties in with that. So you're probably scratching your heads and saying, what's the Shema? And how does it tie in with discipling kids? Well, glad you asked. You see, many years ago, a wise leader once stood up before a congregation of God's people, and he gave the following instructions. He said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them upon your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them to your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." So, who was this wise leader? This wise leader was Moses, and he was talking to the entire nation of Israel. Note, he wasn't just talking to the moms and dads or the aunts and uncles or grandparents. He was talking to the entire nation, that is all of God's people. So if you are a member of the church, if you are part of God's family, then discipling kids affects you too. So listen close. What is the commandment he gives them? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is to be impressed upon kids' hearts. And it's so important we should talk about it all the time. He says you should talk about this when you're driving down the road. You should talk about this when you sit down to a meal together. You should talk about loving God with your whole being when it should be the first thing you talk about when you get up in the morning and when you lay down at night. You should be talking about loving God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Wow, that's pretty important. Well, it's such an important message. A few years later, just a few, Jesus actually confirms this message. When challenged by a Pharisee, remember the Pharisees were the religious leaders of Jesus' day. It actually says in Matthew chapter 22 that this particular Pharisee was an expert in the law. That is, the law of Moses. And this expert in the law came to Jesus to test him, trying to trip Jesus up. He comes to Jesus and he says, "Teacher, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." And Jesus continued. He said, "And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." Notice what Jesus doesn't say. Jesus doesn't say, which is the greatest commandment? Well, they're all important. They're all equal. It's important that we keep them all. No, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say, well, my favorite commandment or the best commandment is that one about not murdering. Yeah, don't do that one. No, he doesn't pinpoint any certain one. What he does is he summarizes all the law and all the prophets under this one umbrella, this common organizing factor of love. So we have this common organizing factor of love that he summarizes it all under. And he says, he does say they're all important, but he makes it easier. Instead of giving us a list of 100 or 200 different things to do, or even that list of 10, which we fail to keep, he says, let's make it simple. There's two. Love the Lord your God with all you've got, and love others as you love yourself. So what does this have to do with discipling kids? Well, Moses pointed out that it's so important we should be talking about it with them all the time. We should be keeping these reminders in front of kids at all times. But I want to take it a little bit deeper, and I want to look at this. So this is our common organizing factor, love. So who are we supposed to love? Well, God and others as ourselves. So What does it look like to love God? How do we teach kids to love God? Well, we teach them about the character of God. We show them who He is in Scripture and who God has revealed Himself to be. So we take kids through Scripture and we teach them that God is all-powerful. He's omniscient. He's all-knowing. He created everything. And we show them the miracles of God and teach them God's character. And when we do that, the result in the life of a kid, the result is deeper faith. You see, when kids fall in love with God, it results in a deeper faith. They take ownership of this relationship with God. And they fall in love with and believe in God and who He says He is in Scripture, who He's revealed Himself to be. Well, then Jesus, He tacked on the second greatest commandment. He said, love others as you love yourself. Now, this loving yourself, this one, it sounds arrogant, doesn't it? Kids, you need to love yourself. This isn't that arrogant, look at me, I'm the best, arrogant kind of love. When we say kids need to love themselves, what we're saying is they need to understand who they are in a relationship to an all-powerful, loving God. When kids realize their relationship to this all-powerful God, then loving themselves becomes a little easier because they realize who they are, that they are nothing without God. They realize that they are created in His image, that He loves them so much that God sent His Son for them, and they realize that God knows their name. He knows every hair on their head. Their value is found in God. Their self-worth is found in God. And the result of loving yourself like that, knowing that you are loved, well, the result of that smarter decisions. You see, when kids learn to love themselves and have a self-respect based upon who they are as children of God, then they make smarter decisions. Smarter decisions when it comes to drugs and alcohol. Smarter decisions when it comes to sex and pornography. Smarter decisions when it comes to self-harm, depression, those things. When they realize that they're a child of God and they found their value in that instead of what social media tells them they are, what their friends and peers tell them who they are, or even in an abusive home life tells them they are, when they find their self-worth in the relationship to God and His love, then they make smarter decisions. So, when kids fall in love with the God of the Bible, it results in a deeper faith. When kids fall in love with themselves because of their relationship to this God, they make smarter decisions. And you know what? It's really hard to love others if you don't love yourself. If you don't understand who you are. You kind of have to know yourself before you can help somebody else. So, loving others as you love yourself. Well, loving others. If it wasn't for God, we wouldn't know what love is, would we? It's because of Him right here that we even know what love is. God actually told us that it's because of His love that we can love others. He set the example through Jesus. Jesus came and died and sacrificially gave of Himself. To set the example. Jesus washed His disciples' feet. And Jesus set this example for how we are to love others as we love ourselves. And He set this example. And because of that example, kids can learn to love others. And what does that look like? What does that result in? Well, when kids learn to love others in this context of God in the Bible, well, it results in stronger or deeper relationships. That is, stronger relationships with their peers, with their friends, stronger relationships with their teachers, with their parents, stronger and better relationships with their future employers. This results in stronger relationships with their future spouse, stronger relationships when it comes to dating. Oh, I know parents, you don't want to think about that. Yes, especially with the younger ones. But when we take these two commandments, the Shema that we've been given, love the Lord your God with all you got, and then love others as yourself. And we take these things and we remind kids every day of the importance of this, and we teach this to our kids as we're driving down the road, as we sit down to dinner together, when we lay our heads down at night, when we get up in the morning, when you pray with your kids and you talk about these things, it's going to result in kids making smarter decisions, having a deeper faith, and stronger relationships. So that is how the Shema relates to discipleship and discipling kids. So moms, dads, families, church, Discovery Street leaders, it's our job. Moses stood up before the entire congregation, all of God's people, and he said, impress these things upon the kids' hearts, upon the hearts of children. So my prayer is that we can do this here at Providence. Love you guys.